Well, there's no shortage of water in the Murray right now, but farmers may still lose some of their water entitlements under the draft plan for the Murray-Darling Basin. That's not the only pressure point. Farmers say they're also up against alleged price cutting by the two main supermarkets, Coles and Woolworths, as Kirsten Vaness reports.
I have always enjoyed the horticultural industry. I've always enjoyed the challenge. You could live a good life and raise your children, but it is getting extremely tough, and we are very anxious about whether that's going to be able to continue.
The fruit looks good, and there's plenty of it at Gay Tripodi's orchard in Swan Hill. Yet strangely, she says this season has been the hardest yet.
We've been unable to export like we normally do due to the high dollar, and so the returns on the domestic market have been the lowest in stone fruit that I've encountered in 20 years.
An oversupply of stone fruits has helped to drive prices down.
The markets in all states are saying to me they've never been so quiet. They haven't got the buyers. I think people are very cautious about how they're spending their money, even in the supermarket, and stone fruit's probably not considered a staple.
Gay Tripodi says she's struggling to cover the costs of production, and her concerns have only been amplified by the current debate about the Murray-Darling Basin.
Some have spent hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars securing this permanent water. They would be very anxious about whether they're going to have the supply of that in the future.
If you keep on taking water out of the system...
It's a concern being aired at community meetings to discuss the draft plan.
And one of the things that hit home to me very strongly was the perception in the wider Victorian community of northern Victorian irrigation area. Why would you want to farm up there? It's stuffed. You've got no water and they want to take the water away from us.
The process has 5 weeks to go, and while the last round of consultation was marked by scenes of anger...
Burn the plan! Burn the plan! We can't put it out because we've got no water if they take it, eh?
The feeling this time is more one of cynicism.
I'd say really there is an undertone of mistrust, and people are very angry about the whole thing.
I think farmers are tired, farmers are busy. I think there's a scepticism that government's going to do what they're going to do.
Well, there's no absolute predetermined outcome here. We have a draft plan in place which proposes a way forward, but as I think people who are dealing with me and the authority, we have been open to suggestions and very open with our processes. I endorse that.
The Victorian Water Minister says water savings should come from improvements to the irrigation system rather than the irrigators themselves.
Victoria can't afford to lose any more water out of food production in this state. With the infrastructure projects that have been done and the savings going to the Commonwealth, people feel enough is enough.
Those improvements have already saved more than 1,000 gigalitres of water. The current draft plan is proposing to return a total of 2,750 gigalitres to the river system, down from the original recommendation of 4,000. Environmentalists say this is not nearly enough to ensure the health of the Murray, while irrigators argue it's too much considering the recent rain and floods. The Murray-Darling Basin's chairman seems to agree.
I think it's important to say that in the present circumstances where we've had a lot of rain over the last year or so, the landscape's pretty healthy. The other thing we know that over the next few years there are still a fair few infrastructure projects on the drawing boards that will come into play.
So it's unlikely the numbers will go up?
I think in the short term it is unlikely that the numbers will go north, but we have to be open to contemplating that.
But the authority can only make a recommendation. It's the Commonwealth that signs off on the plan, and that worries farmers like John Ward.
The consultation process would just enable politicians to say that everybody's been consulted. But I don't think the consultation process really will mean anything, because it ultimately is going to be a political decision.
As a farmer for nearly 60 years, he says the heart of the issue is not being addressed, and that's Australia's food security.
I'm not meaning that we shouldn't be working on a plan that does make the environment better, But the way the society now demands cheap food, high wages, shorter hours, all of those, at some stage, something's got to give.
There are people out there who are growing your food and they need to make $1 growing it, and they're being forced to partake in a food war that the supermarkets have got on that simply talks about food being the cheapest rather than being the best value.
Coles 2 litre full cream milk down and staying down.
John Ward says growers are being forced to meet benchmark prices set by the major supermarkets.
They are threatened that if they don't meet the benchmark price, they will import the product. Is this good for the future of our country?
He says farmers are afraid they'll be penalised by the supermarkets if they speak out.
As I understand from a number of these people speaking in private, they are forced to a pricing. Now, it's easy when there's surplus of everything to force growers down. It's easy. I just wonder what will happen for my grandchildren when, in fact, we have to rely on bringing in fresh food from perhaps China or Taiwan or Indonesia or the Philippines. I'm fearful of that.
The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission recently launched an investigation into the conduct of the two supermarket giants and has already been contacted by concerned suppliers. Meanwhile, Coles and Woolworths deny they have threatened to import fruit and vegetables if growers can't meet a certain price. But for horticulturalists like Gay Tripodi, some tough decisions need to be made. Is this a business that you want to stay in?
Long term, at the moment the answer would be no, but we've got no choice. And purely because, like I said before, the return on investment, it makes you sit back.
It would be easier to say, no, I'm not going to produce anymore. That would be the easiest thing. Go and get a welfare payment for sitting down doing nothing. But I'm not built that way.
So at age 73, is it?
Correct, yes.
You do all the work as well?
I do all the work, yes. 150 acres of vines.
You tired?
I sleep well.
Our government needs to sit down with industry groups and seriously work out how to keep farmers on the land.
If someone offered you money for your land, would you take it?
If the cheque was big enough.
Kick that dog that owns the land now hard enough and he'll sell it.
Kirsten Vaness with that report.